Zenless Zone Zero has a lot of really cool characters. We just recently got Zhu Yuan, who cranks out some nutty ether damage. But let's shift gears and talk about one of the more underrated DPS units, Soldier 11. She's currently a top 3 or 4 DPS in the game and leads the very strong top tier fire team. In this video today, we're gonna break down everything about her. We will discuss her full kit, combos, team synergies, the best way to build her, and more. Grab yourself some red hot chili pepper noodles that hopefully don't have fleas, and let's do this. Let's start by breaking down Soldier 11's kit. She is of course a standard S-rank fire DPS unit, and is currently the only one from the Old Bull squad faction. She will primarily focus on burn and cranking up her stats when enemies are in that burnt state. Furthermore, she has kind of a unique playstyle in that you have to time her moves properly in order to use her optimally. Starting with the basic attack, there are technically 2 forms of this move. If you don't time it correctly, it'll just activate the warm-up sparks, dealing physical damage in 4 total strikes. The correct timing will activate basic attack fire suppression, which will attack with much stronger powerful slashes, dealing fire damage. As a note, there are a few different ways to time the move properly. Here's a couple of tricks to practice this. First is an audio cue, so let's show that here and listen carefully to this example. As you can see, it's fairly lenient on this audio cue and doesn't take too long to master. Second is just simply a visual cue and what I predominantly use for my Soldier 11. Once you get used to the animations of the strikes, you can just simply follow it up so it's a fluid motion. Moving on to the special attack, Raging Fire. This is pretty simple in that it's just a wide slash dealing fire damage. Anti-interrupt is also increased during this skill. When you have the energy, it will turn into EX Special Fervent Fire. This will also deal fire damage with full invulnerability. However, after using this skill, fire suppression will be automatic on dash attacks and basic attacks for 15 seconds or 8 total times. Optimizing this fire suppression part of Soldier 11's kit is going to be crucial for her gameplay. Basically, when you activate the EX Special and a few other moves that activate fire suppression, then you can start mashing the basic attacks. Soldier 11's dodge mechanics are pretty simple. Her regular dash attack with no timing or fire suppression active will just do physical damage. After using EX Special, fire suppression will activate here as well, doing fire damage. Also, every dodge counter from Soldier 11 will automatically be fire damage. When your decibel rating hits 3000 aka max, you know what time it is. It's time to press Q! This will activate the ultimate bellowing flame. Starting with a huge upward slash, this will deal very powerful fire damage. She will be fully invulnerable, as is the case for most ultimates in this game. This will also activate those fire suppression modes for basics and dash attacks for 15 seconds or 8 times total, like we discussed earlier. Additionally, it's very important to note the multipliers for higher levels of this ultimate are actually some of the strongest in the game, so this is a very good thing to capitalize on her damage. Core passives are another really important concept with any character, especially Soldier 11, and it's actually very easy and simple to activate these. Both are automatic and increase soldiers' damage significantly. The first one is Heat Wave, and just simply states that during a fire suppression basic or dash attack, the damage from those moves will be increased by 35%. Take it away, Flex Seal Guy.
That's a lot of damage. How about a little more?
That's right, it gets even higher with the second one called Fields of Fire. This is the one that requires another fire unit or Old Bull's squad member, which we have none of at the moment. Soldier will deal 10% more fire damage for free. However, when attacking stunned enemies, this effect will increase by 22.5%. This leaves us with a total of 32.5% fire damage boost on Soldier 11 just for having a fire unit in our team and hitting stunned enemies. But now that we know her kit, let's dive into that optimal gameplay with her, followed by team synergies, and then of course her best builds. You're definitely not going to want to miss that, so make sure you stay tuned till later in the video and subscribe while you're at it. The main key to playing Soldier 11 will of course be getting that timing correct for the basic attacks activating fire suppression. Once you do master this, she becomes pretty straightforward and simple, and one of the most effective DPS for all of the game's content. I would argue that she's top 3 in DPS, obviously behind Ellen and Zhu Yuan. At M0, I do give her the edge over Nekomata, just barely though. From a meta standpoint, Soldier 11 is in a very strong state, especially since she's the only fire deeps in the game. A lot of the game is actually weak to fire exclusively, especially in Shiyu defense critical nodes. While she doesn't have a lot of extra oomph built into her kit, she still packs insane damage from very strong multipliers, especially looking at that ultimate. In fact, the fire teams led by her are probably the 3rd best team in the entire game right now. For these team building strategies, it's pretty easy and simple to make a coordinated team. Everyone gets a free Ben Bigger, and Lucy is an A rank unit. And yes, don't forget that you do have to say Ben's name like that just because he's so stinking cool. In this regard, her best team will be Soldier 11, Kaleda, and Ben Bigger. Although you can swap out Ben for Lucy if you so wish. At first, I was using Lucy as that 3rd slot for very quick rotations and the universal buffs that she offers, specifically a massive attack and energy boost. However, as the game continues, I have switched to Ben Bigger more recently. Depending on the content, that seems to be the right move, especially when you have Kaleda. Speaking of the Bellabog president, she is the must pair with Soldier 11 if you have her, as stun is very prevalent in the game's meta right now. In Kaleda's case, when she teams with Ben, she gets coordinated attacks with him, in turn increasing the amount of daze she deals, stunning the enemies faster. I got her on my failed 50-50 on the Ellen banner, but don't fret if you don't have Kaleda. Soldier, Ben, and Lucy is still a very good team and easily meets the passives. In addition, Soldier 11 also has some future-proofing built into her as well, since she's currently the only member of her faction so far. As we get more Obol squad units released, her value will naturally increase both as DPS and for team building purposes. Now let's finally move on to the full build portion for Soldier 11, the part that everybody's been waiting for. Ultimately, she has very strong options and a good variety of what you can use on her, making her a bit easier to build. Starting with W engines, her best in slot will be the one made for her, the Brimstone. Upon hitting an enemy with a basic attack, dash attack, or dodge counter, the equipper's attack increases by 3.5% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 8 times. This can trigger once every half a second. In optimal conditions, especially with the fire suppression basic attacks, that's a 28% attack boost to Soldier 11. But don't worry if you don't have Brimstone, as the other options are still very strong. In fact, the next 2 are kinda up to personal preference on how you want to build her. One of these choices is the Starlight engine, since it's completely free to play, which means you can easily S5 it just by pulling it or through the Box Galaxy store. This one will focus on launching dodge counters and quick assist to increase the equipper's attack by 12% for 12 seconds at S1. If you are using this, you just gotta make sure you're using those dodge counters on the field to get that attack boost every 12 seconds or so, part as your rotation. The third option is the Battle Pass W engine Cannon Rotor. This is an extremely strong universal attack engine option for pretty much any DPS in the current roster, so naturally I had to buy it. This increases the agent's attack by 7.5% just for free, and when you land a crit on an enemy, it will inflict an additional 200% of attack as damage, triggering once every 8 seconds. It's also important to note that one of Cannon Rotor's stats is crit rate instead of just attack percent like the other 2. This is actually really good because any of the DPS in the game really want to focus on crit rate and crit damage as their primary stat. As for some budget options, you can get by with Street Superstar if you pull it, and that was my main one I used on her until I got Cannon Rotor. Whenever a squad member launches a chain attack, the equipper gains a charge stack up to 3 times. When you use the ultimate, it'll consume all charge stacks, and each stack increases the damage by 15%. Totaling 45% on her already stacked ultimate. I really wouldn't consider any of the B ranks as a viable option, since that Starlight engine is free to play, you can just at least get a copy of that. Moving on to her disk drives, there's a fair bit of personal preference here as well. The best in slot for her though will be 4-piece Inferno Metal. Of course you'll get your increased fire damage by 10%, but upon hitting a burning enemy, the equipper's crit rate increases by 28% for for 8 seconds. What's pretty interesting for Soldier though is you can use a couple of different sets for 4-piece instead of Inferno if you so desire. Although it'll mainly come down to what you can get the best stats on if you're going to use these other two, as Inferno Metal will be best in slot. Puffer Electro increases pen ratio by 8% and ultimate damage by 20%. Additionally, launching an ultimate increases Soldier 11's attack by 15% for 12 seconds. The third option for a 4-piece is Woodpecker Electro, increasing crit rate by 8%. When triggering a critical hit with a basic attack, dodge counter, or EX special, it'll increase the equipper's attack by 9% for 6 seconds. As for 2 pieces, it'll just simply be any of the ones we discussed that you aren't using for the 4-piece bonus. In other words, if you have the 4-piece Woodpecker, you can just use 2-piece of either Puffer or Inferno Metal, and vice versa. Hormone Punk also gets an additional mention here, but only as a 2-piece, and naturally it'll increase her attack by 10%. As for my current and most preferred build on Soldier 11, I'm using the 4-piece Inferno Metal for the burn crit rate boost. My 2-piece is currently Puffer Electro because it's very efficient to farm. Once you start farming disc drives, preferably at level 40 in or not, that's when you'll get your best gains. One of the choices is Inferno Metal paired with Puffer Electro, making it an extremely good, easy way to get both amazing sets. But don't forget that the main stats on disc drives 4 through 6 are variable, and they should be as follows. Slot 4 for any DPS in the game should be crit rate or crit damage. And honestly, if you're using Cannon Rotor along with Inferno Metal, you could probably just go for crit damage rather than crit rate. Slot 5 should be fire damage optimally, but attack percent is also fine as well. Slot 6 in general for DPS should just be attack percent and not really anything else. Substat priority is about the same. Crit rate, crit damage are the most important, followed by attack percent, then followed by your flat pen and your flat attack. A quick note about the Bangboos, her best in slot will be Rocket Boo. When there are 2 or more fire attribute characters in your squad, Bangboo Chain Attack inflicts 100% more anomaly buildup or burn. As a budget Boo option, I guess, use Cry Boo. This little guy basically has the same passive, but it's 60% more anomaly buildup rather than 100. Not much else to say there for the Bangboos, just use your Boo Pawns on Rocket Boo if you do want to make a really good fire team. But let's go ahead and review a little bit of what we talked about with Soldier. She's a very simple, strong character once you master the timing on her very good kit. She leads one of the best teams in the game with Kaleda and either Ben or Lucy. Oh, I'm sorry, I did say that wrong. I meant Ben Bigger. Anyway, pair that with those crazy build options like Inferno Metal, Woodpecker Electro, and Puffer Electro. Her stats and stat priority are pretty much the same as any of the DPS in the game, focusing on crit, attack percent, then flat pen and flat attack. But ultimately, there's a lot of different build options between the engines and the disk drives depending on how you want to build her and how you want to play. And that's basically everything for this video. What do you think of Soldier 11 and Zenless Zone Zero as a whole? Let me know in the comments below, as well as if there's any way I can improve these guides for the future. Next up should be our awesome 1.1 characters Qing Yi and Jane Doe once they finally release, and I'm super excited for it. But like this video if it helped anyway, and subscribe for more Zenless Zone Zero guides, gameplay, and more, because I really love making this kind of content for all of you. Hoyoverse continues to make Zenless Zone Zero one of my favorite games, and just insanely fun to play, and I can't wait to see what the future has in store. In the meantime, that's it. Remember that all it takes is one pull, and bye for now.